Welcome to episode 12 of Rail Talk. My name is Joe Bianca. I'm an ownership advisor at West Point Thoroughbreds. And John and I have been apart from each other for a little bit. I did a great breakaway Rail Talk with Jim Politano. John did a great one with Aaron Yagoda. I suggest you go check those out right now. But John, as the great Taylor Swift once said, it hits different when it's you.
Well, I don't know how to respond to that, Joe, but I will say that I loved your breakaway Rail Talk with Jim. It was hysterical, and I think we both benefited by interviewing people that we like spending time with, and it definitely showed up as opposed to you and me, where we're like, ugh, can this show freaking end already, please?
By the way, we're both 1-3. Both football teams are 1-3. The Jets look significantly better than the Giants. So would you like to take this time to put another hex on one of our better players?
I don't think there are any other all-pro players that we should put a hex on for either team, quite frankly. But Joe, I do want to say, since we're talking about the unwanted Hall of Shame, I will say that as a Lehigh grad, there is another Hall of Shame that has hit a whole nother level. I don't know if you realize, with everything going on with former President Trump and all of his legal issues, but Alina Habab is a Lehigh grad.
Who's that?
That's his lead attorney for this, for the whole session. Yes, another. It's like there's 3 Pulitzer Prize winners coming out of Lehigh: Jack Dreyfus from the Dreyfus Funds, Lee Iacocca, and then it's like me, Alina Habib, and Donnie Most. Yes, Ralph Mouth, also a Lehigh grad.
What an all-star cast!
Bam, 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 bam.
Welcome to another episode of Rail Talk. Please like this video and subscribe to our channel as we strive to keep bringing you consistent, honest, and transparent industry content. Rail Talk is sponsored, as always, by Fasig-Tipton. Of course, we got the November sale coming up November 7th. That's 3 days after the conclusion of the Breeders' Cup. We always look forward to that. The Night of the Stars, all those beautiful mares coming through the ring, especially a lot of times after competing and sometimes winning at the Breeders' Cup. It's obviously the biggest star-studded auction of the year. But there's a lot of other action between now and then. We've got the Mid-Atlantic Fall Yearling sale going on right now, or that was Monday and Tuesday. But then we got the digital sale coming up starting tomorrow. The digital sale goes through October 10th. We got the Saratoga Fall Mix sale coming up October 17th. The Kentucky October Yearlings, October 23rd through the 26th. So plenty of action, a lot of options for buyers looking to reload potentially for 2024. And I wanted to mention that last week was the Fasig-Tipton California Yearling sale out in Pomona. And a plucky little outfit named West Point Thoroughbreds bought the topper in Pomona, a $250,000 colt by Vronsky, who's just absolutely gorgeous horse, half brother to multiple stakes winner for John Sadler. So he's going to be going to John Sadler as well. We also bought a really nice Violence filly toward the end of the sale that we think is a bargain. So we're excited for both of those Cal breds. And John, there's a lot to look forward to, as I mentioned, with the digital sale and stuff coming up. What are you looking forward to the most?
Well, we thankfully have some action in both the digital sale and the Night of the Stars. We have 4 horses, ready-made horses that are running now, selling in the digital sale. A couple of stakes performers like Glider and Miranda Wrights. And one more interesting horse is Whitwater Strand, who won first time out very impressively, 2-year-old filly. And she looks like she's going to be the favorite for the Glorious Song on the 15th. So somebody could buy the horse on the 10th and then enter it on the 12th under their name and their colors and run it as one of the favorites, less than a week later. So that's always fun to be able to have ready-made horses, turnkey horses, as they're called. And as far as races coming up this weekend that are going to be important too, Joe, aside from that little plucky little filly Wonder Wheel that we're selling in the Night of the Stars, we're also selling Sibelius's half sister, Goddess Pele. And Sibelius, you say, of course, I know that Sibelius won the Dubai Golden Shaheen, John, by a nose. I remember that. But he's also running in the Grade 2 Phoenix this weekend as well. So, chock full of horses that DJ's selling through TaylorMaid at Fasig-Tipton. I see a pattern of greatness here.
Normally on Rail Talk, on a sophisticated show such as this one, we don't wade into the horse racing Twitter beef and the sewer of racing. But there was a story that poked through into the mainstream while John and I were apart the last couple of weeks. And trainer Bob Baffert, I'm quoting from our old friend Bill Finley here. Trainer Bob Baffert has sued well-known Twitter, now known as X. I love that people have to say that. Let's just keep calling it Twitter. Fuck Elon. Justin Wunderler and Daniel DeCorsia for defamation and extortion over frequent posts on the social media website, which Baffert's lawyers contend amounted to a series of escalating threats and criminal conduct, adding that the defendants have urged others to engage in violent behavior toward Baffert and his family, basically accused Baffert of criminal conduct and attempted to extort Baffert and his family under threats to his business, reputation, and occupational license. So if you're not familiar, basically just some quick background. There's a guy named Swift Hitter at Swift Hitter and another guy at Barstool Life. And they're kind of like the kingpins of horse racing Twitter and horse gambling Twitter. And a lot of guys, nerds, look up to them. And they have been, especially Swift. Swift has been on Baffert's case for a while now, like years and years. And a lot of times I kind of agree with him because I think Baffert has skated on a lot of like the horse stats and the drug positives that he's had over the years. So in a way, I kind of liked having that voice as like an ombudsman to be the critic of Bob Baffert on a major social media platform. But I do think that he has taken it too far. Sometimes it's become a complete obsession. And the thing that this stems from, the main thing that this stems from is Swift claimed that he had this video, and I don't know what's in the video. He hasn't really explained exactly what's in the video that would, quote, end Bob Baffert's career. That's basically what he said. And he was going around, he was offering it to people, asking for money in a lot of cases. And John can expound on this because Swift actually hit John up in a DM to try to sell this video to him. But we haven't seen the video, but he was purporting that it would end Bob Baffert's career. It's a mess. And I kind of, this is a story with no good guys to me. And it's just the let them fight gif from Godzilla. And I'm curious to see how it goes. On the one hand, I think Baffert is a little bit petty for going after him like this. On the other hand, Swift, he fucked around and he found out, John, how do you feel?
Well, I feel like I'm the one who said that to you on the phone. So now you totally stole my line about, the fucking around and finding out. But see that as a major.
You're the first person to say that phrase.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Coin the phrase, fuck around and find out. My bad.
Exactly.
Your check's in the mail.
Thank you. That's my retirement plan. And I do just want to correct one quick thing. Swift and I have been in contact with each other on a lot of topics, horses that we're running and sales and obviously Baffert. And when he posted that he had a video, I actually asked him about the video. It wasn't that he was necessarily hitting me up for money, but
my bad.
I asked him about the video, and he said, "Yes, I have it." And I said, "Well, what are you doing with it?" And he said, "It's for sale." And that's about as far as it went. But yeah, he was basically trying to derive money from it, illicit money from it by in essence selling the smoking gun video that nobody really knows what's on it yet. And try to exploit it and monetize it. I like the healthy conversations that go on with regard to various topics, especially in horse racing, because there's definitely two distinct camps. There's the Baffert mania, the people who love him and think that he's the GOAT and that he, why is he even being questioned? It's because everyone else is jealous and petty. And then there's a group that is basically like, this guy is bad for racing. Numerous of his horses have died. Numerous on the racetrack. Numerous horses have tested, for and been disqualified for drugs. And he's just a scourge in the industry. And it's tough it's such a magnetic, conversation and topic that it's tough to be in the middle on a lot of it. And Joe, I've been in the camp of, I don't necessarily think that Baffert is good for racing. And I've been boisterous about that. I've gotten a lot of negative feedback about that. It's not that I dislike the guy. It's not that I think Baffert is the second coming of Satan or anything like that. I just think that, in my opinion, I think that that he has skirted a lot of the rules, and that, as a fact, you can say that dozens of his horses have died on the track under his care. And as a fact, you can say that he's had horses that have been DQ'd from top races, grade 1 races. And therefore he should be investigated and continue to be kind of, player one as far as what HISA and what we're trying to do as an industry. And if he's clean and these are all just coincidences that happen, then I will be the first one to say that, that he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame and deserves to be the focal point of the industry. But until that day happens, I'm not a big fan of his. And again, I get a lot of shit about that because he is an important figure in the industry, and I totally understand that. That being said, there's no place in the industry or in our world for that disgust or that unlike of a certain individual to boil over and go into where now you're trying to intimidate him. Now you're trying to extort money. Now you're trying to solicit others to do harm to him and his family and his horses. That's really not cool. That's I mean, it's criminal, obviously, if it's proven. But there's definitely a line in my mind, and not that I'm a Boy Scout, but there's definitely a line that says you can not like somebody, you can root against somebody, you can hope that if they are doing things that are nefarious, that they are ultimately come to light. But to wish and instigate harm on that person and his family and his horses, that's way, way, way over the line. And, I've heard arguments about, that Bob Baffert's a public figure, and therefore, because he's defined as a public figure, the courts, give a lot more leeway to people as far as, discrediting a public figure and things like that. And there's all kinds of legal reasons why that's the case. But, saying somebody is bad for the sport, saying that somebody is a scourge for the industry is one thing. Going after his family and his livelihood is way over the line.
Yeah, no, and they go over the line so many times, like especially with misogyny. There's a lot of misogyny on horse racing Twitter when it comes to attacking women and saying shit that you just should never say about women, especially in the industry where they're kind of like an endangered species to begin with. It's harder to make it as a woman in this business. And yeah, that's what I feel. I feel two ways about this. Like I'm not crying for Swift or Barshoe guy, but I'll just just in the interest of fairness, I want to read Justin Wunderler, Swift Hitter's reply to a direct message that Bill Finley sent him asking him for a comment. He says, Bob Baffert has continued to put the sport of horse racing in a bad light. This is not extortion. I want to do what's best for horse racing and what's best for the sport's longevity. Too many horses under his care have died. It's time we speak up for the horses that have no say. I want nothing from Bob Baffert or any of his associates. I want what's best for the game I love, horse racing. You could tell that's after his lawyer spoke to him. That's a much more tidied up, polished up statement than what he's been posting on Twitter for days and weeks at a time. And, there was all sorts of other context that he's, has a gambling problem and a drug addiction. And like, this is kind of what led to this behavior and blah, blah, blah. I will say that I do think his heart is in the right place, that he does care that horses are breaking down, and we all do. And that's like, I do think that that's kind of his North Star here, such as it is to, go after a guy who has had a poor safety record over the years. It's undeniable that his horses have broken down more frequently than I think anybody in California other than Peter Miller, maybe. And so I think his heart is in the right place there in trying to protect horses, and he really does care about the breakdowns. And this isn't just an opportunistic thing, but at the same time, as John said, like there is a line you don't cross, especially when it comes to someone's family and inciting people to go after Jill Baffert and stuff like that. Like that just is way, way too far. And like it's been a long time coming. I think that these guys have gotten cut down a notch because it's just. It's a cesspool. Like horse racing Twitter is a cesspool, and these guys feed into that, if not incite it and instigate it even further. So like I said, story with no good guys. I'll just sit back and eat popcorn and see how it goes. Rail Talk is sponsored by the Green Group. Green Group / DJ Stable will have a lot of action in the next month, as John mentioned earlier, leading up to the Breeders' Cup and at the Fasig-Tipton sales. But if you're not using the Green Group to help you with taxes, you're probably, scratch that, definitely paying too much money in taxes. The Green Group has over 800 clients in the horse business. Len Green and the Green Group, they know it inside and out because they're successful owners and breeders and industry insiders and been doing this for more than 40 years with over 2,500 wins. And the Green Group knows two things better than most: the horse business and accounting. And the Venn diagram, they're like this, right on top of each other. And a consultation with Len won't just save you money in taxes, but it's fun. Len is a leading voice in entrepreneurship. He taught at the Babson School. He authored a book called The Entrepreneur's Playbook, which you should 100% read if you're at all into business. And he's owned over 30 successful businesses. Talking with Len is like getting a mini MBA. I know our producer, Patty Wolf, and her kids can attest to that. He's always willing to mentor and share his knowledge, and that's why we appreciate Len and the Green Group always. A couple stories we want to get to before we look forward to this weekend, because there is a ton of great racing. This is one of the final prep weekends for the Breeders' Cup. We're basically a month away right now exactly from the Breeders' Cup. First of all, Paco Lopez finally got a little bit of comeuppance. He gets suspended for 30 days or 60 days, like every couple of years, it seems. And it's just like, he's just one of those guys that's like, he's gotten a million chances in racing, and in any other sport, he would have been banned for life right by now. What he was in trouble for this time was his ride in the Greenwood Cup. The Greenwood Cup is a 1.5 mile race on the Pennsylvania Derby undercard at Parks. By the way, before we get into that, how unbelievable was next in that race? Like, oh my goodness. Like, he went by 25, 30 lengths. Like, that horse is unbelievable to go 1.5 miles and to be widening like that in the stretch. Like, they should run him in the Classic. Like, it sounds like they're going to run him in the Thoroughbred Aftercare marathon thing, but after that performance, I would put him in the Classic. There's nobody to be scared of in there. Anyway, back to our friend Paco. So he was on the runner-up in that race, or was going to be the runner-up. The horse was second pretty much the whole way, second throughout the stretch. And he stood up on the horse like way before the wire. He got nailed late by like some 80-1 shot for second in the last jump. And it was a terrible look. If you look at the place photo, like, he's easing that horse up. Not only that, but he was like, he had him on the rail in the stretch, and the rail was like a river. Like, it looked like New York City this past weekend with all the rain. And that's where he had the horse running. Like, this is the stuff that drives people nuts. And this is why I hardly ever bet Kent DeSormo horses. Because, once he figured out he couldn't win, he's not going to fight for third or fourth, even though you might need those bets to cash, and the owners definitely need that money to help, keep the horses in training. But, John, what was your impression from watching that Paco ride and from him finally getting popped for something? Yeah,
Joe, if you had said to me, hey, John, Paco Lopez is getting 30 days for reckless riding, I would say, okay, it's about time. I mean, he dominates Monmouth. He's like a big bully because he's usually on the best horse, and he usually can, bust his way through holes that aren't there, or take liberties that other jockeys can't do. And in this case, I'm not just picking on Monmouth, because it happens with a lot of top riders at their local racetrack where they're bigger than the game. So they're able to take advantage of that situation. And Paco's ridden and won a lot of races for us, and he's a very good rider, but he is reckless. I mean, to say the least. There have been many, many times where you hold your breath because, you think your horse is going to go down because Paco's riding 2 or 3 horses in the race, in essence. And Joe, I think you'll back me up on this as well, but you can almost say the same thing about Irad in New York a lot of times, where, he's not only riding his own horse, but he's also riding other horses, and doesn't get the same kind of, it isn't held to the same kind of, stature that the other riders are with regard to how reckless and aggressive they're riding the horses. But once Paco left the friendly confines of Monmouth Park and went to Parks, they took advantage of the opportunity to zap him with something. And again, it wasn't reckless riding. It was not even riding. I mean, basically, like you said, Next was in a whole other zip code by the time he hit the wire. And Paco at the time, at the top of the stretch, was like 8 or 10 lengths up on the rest of the field. So I understand, like, maybe he's not going to ride the horse hard because he's no way he's going to have a chance to win. And it was a sloppy racetrack. And I didn't hear this from his camp, but maybe he was a little concerned about, hey, why should I go ahead and have this horse really extend himself, and ask for him when I know he's not going to win, and it's a sloppy racetrack and it's raining torrentially. So I'm just going to wrap up on him. The problem is that he really mistimed it. And in a stake race, you could sometimes say, well, that may have cost the horse some black type. Thankfully, Riding with Biden already had black type and is not a filly, so it's not that as big of a deal. But as an owner, I almost puked when I saw the fact that the horse, missed out on finishing second place, because basically you're cutting the amount of money that you make in half when you go from second to third place. You go from 20-something% at Parks to 11% at Parks, which again doesn't seem like a huge difference. Oh, these rich owners, they don't really care, but it makes a big difference when you're saying I'm going to have 50%. And on top of it, how about if you were gambling and you had the exacta cold, where you had Next and you had Riding with Biden, and in the last zap, an 80-1 shot comes in and knocks you out of the box. How pissed off would you be at that point? About not hitting the exacta or any of the other bets that I'm sure a lot of people had. And Cassius King, was one of the major owners of Riding with Biden with LC Racing. And I know those guys, and Chuck is a dear friend of ours, and we've had a lot of good times with them. And I know for a fact that I don't know for a fact, I would assume that it would just absolutely upset him to the nth degree that a rider didn't have the wherewithal to just try to continue to keep the horse's momentum, not even ride them hard at that point, but just keep the horse's momentum and not pull them up, right, and miss out on getting zapped for second place.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's the whole crux of it. Like if he had, Butch Reed was saying after the race, and Butch Reed was pissed at Paco. He was yelling at him on the track. I think a lot of people had reported that, but he was saying that due to the ride, he was concerned that the horse was unsound. Right. That was his assumption, that Paco felt something off and pulled him up. But then they said they went over him 3 different times after the race, and everything was fine. So yeah, that understandably drives people crazy. And just a quick aside, can we stop, racetrack video camera operators across the country? Can we stop when a horse is up by like 20, 30 lengths, zooming into the winner? Right. That's the opposite of what you should be doing. Like, we already know who the winner is. Pan back and show the gamblers who need a horse for second or third, the battle for second or third. That drives me crazy. I can understand sort of if it's NBC or a national broadcast, they want to focus on the winner. But if you're the track feed, you got to zoom out and show me the battle for second or third. But yeah, Paco will always be one of these guys who gets chance after chance because he does have a lot of talent. You'll see him put together some absolutely beautiful rides, and against major jockey colonies too. He'll do it when he parachutes into New York. He'll put together this amazing ride on a horse and snatch victory from the jaws of defeat and all that. But he just has so much baggage at this point, and was not disappointed to see him suspended 30 days. But I'm sure he'll be back doing some stupid shit at Gulfstream in no time if I know Paco. Another story that broke this week and that I wanted to mention is there was a deep dive by the Blood Horse into the New York Thunder breakdown. And it's very, very much worth reading. Maybe we'll put it up on the website so you guys can check it out. It's basically kind of just confirming all of the things that we had supposed and we had predicted and felt about New York Thunder, when I said basically this was a predictable breakdown because of the way he was campaigned. And it goes through the 5 months before his breakdown, where he compiled, I'm quoting from the story here, he compiled a concerning record in terms of soundness. He was scratched from 4 stakes races and twice placed on the vets list, once for lameness in Kentucky and once for injury, no work in New York. 3 times he was scratched from stakes races in Kentucky, and each of those scratches was attributed to a request from the trainer. So that's the key point in this story. And there's a lot of interesting stuff in here that kind of takes you behind the scenes of how it works with trainers and unsound horses and vets lists. Kentucky has a much, much higher percentage of, quote, trainer scratches than vet scratches. So there's a chart in here that I'm looking at, and it says 53% of scratches in Kentucky are initiated by the trainer. Now, if you go to the other major jurisdictions, California is 8%, New York's 9%, Louisiana's 9%. A lot of, in most cases, the majority of those other states, the scratches are vet scratches, which makes sense. The vet examines the horse, determines the horse is not sound to run, scratches them, and then that signals to the rest of the states and the rest of the racing sphere that watch this horse. Make sure this horse works in a satisfactory manner, is scanned prior to his next race before he's allowed to run again. So when Kentucky is, theoretically, supposedly here allowing trainers to avoid that vet scratch designation, instead have the designation be a trainer scratch, what that does is it keeps the horse from being on the vets list. So then he can ship to another jurisdiction and run without those vets at the new track having knowledge that the horse was supposed to be on the vets list and was scratched basically for an unsoundness or for a physical issue. Like that I don't know what the justification, what the explanation for that may be, but that makes a huge difference. And there's more in the story about the differences between the 30-day stand down time for injections compared to 14 days, where a lot of times doing it 30 days out of a race doesn't even do the desired effect for the trainer, so they don't even bother. Like that's been a big factor, it seems, in California's breakdown rate improving so much over the past 4 years, is the 30-day stand down rule instead of 14 days. But John, the vet scratch thing is so interesting to me, and I can't fathom why that would be the case unless Kentucky has a special relationship with these trainers. And the other thing I wanted to mention before I toss it to John is Jorge Delgado is another one of those guys who's had a lot of drug positives, more so than the average trainer. Has had, I think it was like around 6 or 7 horses break down per 1,000 starts, which is obviously much greater than the national average, which is a little over 1. So there were a lot of blinking red lights that could have saved this horse if someone had intervened. But it's just there's so many things that had to go wrong for this to happen. But unfortunately in racing, that kind of shit happens a lot, where there are a lot of people who missed a lot of cues to have a horse not be able to run. John, what's your reaction from all this news?
Well, Joe, you hit on all the major points. You did an excellent job. And the only thing that I would add that I thought was interesting to me that the blood horse put in there, and the blood horse is usually pretty conservative, but they said, quote, Jorge Delgado, had, quote, a less than stellar safety record, which basically is screaming to me like, yeah, the guy has a lot of breakdowns. So, so this isn't a surprise. One of the things about HISA that I know that they're trying to work on is what's considered a covered horse. And right now it's just horses that, have a published breeze or have run. I know they're trying to extend that into sales. Well, one of the things I think they're trying to extend also is to Canada, because if you look, Joe, that the horse New York Thunder ran twice at Gulfstream, then had time off because they scratched it out of a couple of stake races, and they brought the horse up to Canada. And the horse ran, a career best number, winning by 7+ lengths up in the Woodstock. And again, that's one where you say, okay, maybe they were allowed to use some medication up there that is not, used or legal down in the in the lower 48. I learned that when I went to Alaska, by the way, the lower 48. The lower 48.
How are Alaska's racing medication rules?
They're very, very, very liberal.
Top of the line.
Like everything else. You never see a horse break down in Alaska. At least not at the races, for sure. Anyway.
What about the moose? What about the moose medication rules? Anyway, go ahead.
And it should actually be the lower 45, because I think Louisiana, Texas, and another state aren't abiding by HISA, but we digress. Anyway, the important thing is that Kentucky and most racing jurisdictions are very concerned about having horse population. So this is a loophole to allow a horse for 2 reasons. One, not break down on a Kentucky racetrack, so they don't have that negative statistic on their books, and also enable the trainer and the owner to run the horse at a different jurisdiction, without any compromise. And it is a loophole. It is a consideration, and it's something that needs to be shored up, and looked upon. But yeah, Joe, I think when we talked about it the first time, the fact that the horse broke down and just, how terrible it was at the races and for racing. And I think I did say at the time, well, 2020 hindsight, hindsight, of course, you can look back and say this horse broke down. This just gives more credibility to your discussion that you brought up about, we all should have seen this coming. And we all should have seen it ahead of time, not just in our rearview mirror.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And just wanted to clarify some of the statistics I gave before. I'm quoting from the story here. It says, in terms of just looking at the numbers, Delgado has had at least one equine fatality for every 211 starts. Now, the national average is one every 379 starts. So over his career, his horses have suffered such incidents 79% more frequently than that rate. He's also got the unresolved drug positives. And then it goes on to talk about whether or not HISA is using those kind of statistics to single out or scrutinize trainers and, for testing or for investigations or surveillance. And it sounds like they are. Lisa Lazarus says we're looking at it, but it's complex because obviously there can be any number of explanations for a breakdown. She says, Lazarus noted that HISA does not currently use such equine fatality numbers for trainers in its investigations, but it can be a factor that may warrant scrutiny. She says it's very much a factor that we feed into our investigations unit. It's not solely based on that, but the investigations definitely consider a trainer's breakdown rate when they're looking at barn searches or testing. It's one factor. And I hope that's true because to me is the greatest one-to-one relationship is right. not just drug positives, but horses breaking down and trainers racing unsound horses. And this is, there were a lot of parts of the machine that failed New York Thunder, and the Kentucky, vet versus training scratch reporting needs to be definitely scrutinized. I think the Kentucky stewards should have to answer for that. But at the end of the day, it's also on the trainer to do the right thing by the horse. And it's right. It's abundantly clear by now, especially with all this reporting, that Jorge Delgado did not do right by New York Thunder. And I get it. I get that he was a fast horse who, if you could just keep him together, could win these huge races and put you on the map and get you to the Breeders' Cup and all that stuff. But so the horse that was screaming for some time off all year, and not just when the vets require him to be off.
Right. And Joe, I think if I can just add one more thing to it, we talked, I don't know if it was on this show or if it was on one of the breakaways, but there has to be gamblers on the panel or in the room at the table when HISA puts together their next think tank, because these individuals watch these races and watch these trainers much closer than the majority of people in the industry do, because they're looking to get an edge from a gambling standpoint. And you can't tell me that if you went to the top handicappers in the country and said, give me a list of trainers you think are taking an edge, give me a list of trainers you think are skirting issues, from a veterinary standpoint or are running unsound horses, they would come up with a pretty savvy list, I think, and a pretty good list of ones that maybe need to be trainers and owners, for that matter, that need to be scrutinized and need to be, maybe investigated a little bit deeper. So I put it out on our main show now, Joe, and I know you do a lot more gambling than I do, but when you talk to other whales, other people that gamble all the time in the industry, I mean, am I wrong by saying that they have a pretty good list of trainers that they will and won't bet on?
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm far from a whale, but there are whales like Jerry Brown who have said this exact thing, that listen, I can feed you data that I'm already just coming upon in my, daily life as a horse player that can be helpful in these kind of investigations, and not just trainers. Like New York Thunder, I think horse players can pick out specific horses that's this horse is in trouble, this horse is in danger. And obviously it happens at much lower levels than New York Thunder and the grade 1 racing level. You see it every single day, horses being given away off of the claim, just blinking red sign that says claim me. And those are the horses that need extra scrutiny and extra vet work done on them, because it's too easy for horses to fall through the cracks. And the only reason that New York Thunder is getting this kind of attention is because he was 5 steps away from winning a grade 1. He was the fastest 3-year-old sprinter in America before he broke down. But there's so many other horses who will not have that kind of advocacy for them, but who are in the same precarious positions and are being risked on the racetrack every single day in America. And I agree with you, John. You talk to the horse players, they'll do a good job of pointing out which horses and which barns they're coming from. Rail Talk is sponsored by TaylorMaid Sales, the worldwide leader in thoroughbred sales, marketing, and horse care. Family owned and operated since 1976. They were one of the leading consignors at the recently concluded Keeneland September sale. They're obviously going to have a big consignment at the Fasig October sale as well. And they're selling Champion Wonder Wheel for John Green and DJ Stable at the Fasig-Tipton November sale. If you have a big time mare, there's nobody, and I think John will back me up on this, there's nobody you should trust above TaylorMaid, who do a great job with all their service from soup to nuts. They have fun while they're striving for excellence, and they always look for a better way, always innovating. They are the leading consignor in the business for a reason, and they're always going to continue to strive to do better by their clients, and their relationships are just undeniable. And there's, Mark and Duncan and the rest of the team just doing an incredible job from top to bottom. They have an amazing staff and will do a great job by you and your horses. So we got a little weekend preview for you. As I mentioned earlier in the show, it's a huge weekend of Breeders' Cup preps, ton of winning you're in races. And we got Belmont at the Big A. We got a bunch of races coming up. We actually have a really good card today. We're recording this Wednesday early, and we have the Miss Grillo and the Pilgrim Stakes later today. This was the canceled card from Sunday that was moved to Wednesday. So we have a huge week of stakes coming up. West Point's got 4 horses running in 3 races on Friday. So I'll be out there all day. If somehow you happen upon that big old dusty factory out in Ozone Park, Queens, come say hello. I'll be in the owner's lounge. But beyond that, we also have the opening weekend of Keeneland. That's always a really fun weekend. It starts Friday. Ton of stakes over the 3-day Fall Stars weekend. And I just wanted to mention a couple of the races I'm looking forward to the most. The Coolmore Turf Mile. We have Master of the Seas against Up to the Mark, which is just, to me, like those are the 2 best turf horses on American soil right now. And it's going to be really interesting to see how Up to the Mark runs off of the layoff. Last time we saw him, he was crushing his foes in the Manhattan Stakes, but that was almost 4 months ago by now. So who knows whether or not he's going to be the same horse coming back, especially going a mile. I don't know that a mile is necessarily what he wants to do. I think he's better going a mile and an eighth to a mile and a quarter. But then Master of the Seas, who won the Woodbine Mile just 3 weeks ago, Charlie Appleby, always aggressive, puts him in another spot. I love that he's running him in between the Woodbine Mile and the Breeders' Cup. Horses doing well, race your horses. So I'm interested in that matchup. We also have Nest against Idiomatic, a rematch of the Personal Ensign in the Spinster on Sunday. That's going to be a really interesting tactical battle, I think, because I think Irad knows that he let Idiomatic get away from him too much in the Personal Ensign, and she just never looked back. So I'll be interested to see how much pressure Nest puts on Idiomatic this time around. And then we have a really loaded 2-year-old stake schedule as well, with the Breeders' Futurity and the Champagne and the Frisette and the Alcibiades. Alcibiades won, of course, by John Green and DJ Stable with Wonder Wheel last year. And I'm excited to see Fierceness. Of all the horses, of all the 2-year-olds I've seen so far this year, Fierceness was the one that impressed me the most at Saratoga, won by like 11 and a half lengths. And the sales topper at Keeneland September that West Point got a piece of, the Fierceness is under that dam. So the more that he does, the more valuable that Into Mischief colt and the more valuable that Nona Mia family becomes. So I'm interested to see what he does. But it's a loaded weekend of racing, plenty of great betting opportunities. I can't wait, especially for those races that I mentioned. John, what do you have your eye on?
Well, for me, it really comes down to the 2-year-olds and the win that you're in races at Keeneland primarily, because we're still waiting for the draw in New York for those big races. But Joe, what's really exciting for me about both the Jessamine and the Alcibiades, we'll start there, is that you see some familiar faces. You see Mike Maker and Three Diamonds and Tracy Farmer and Mark Cassie and Graham Motion and Godolphin and a lot of the names you normally see, but you also see a lot of new stallions that are being represented in these 2-year-old races. Classic Empire has a 2-year-old. Flame Away, Enticed, Audible, Omaha Beach, and Matoli all have horses from their first crop running in win-you're-in races just in Kentucky. So, we always talk about the Curlins and how well the Curlin are doing and the Into Mischiefs and the Tappets. And for me, it's like a breath of fresh air that you see some of these new stallions that have representation from their first crops in these races. From a personal standpoint, because again, we do the show primarily for me, we have a homebred that we sold that is now named Alpine Princess. That's 8-1 in the Alcibiades that Brad Cox is training for a partnership. But we are one of the breeders with Bill Betts and the team, and that was the first foal out of our Curlin mare, Lemonnier, who is from Retraceable's family and another Miracles family, and that's her first foal, and it sold for $190,000 as a yearling, and won, and now is like I said, 8-1 in the Alcibiades. So a lot of fresh faces, a lot of exciting pedigrees that could potentially get upgraded. And again, these win and you're in races bring so much excitement for that exact reason, because you win and all of a sudden you're thrust into favoritism in the Breeders' Cup juveniles.
Well, and also, you neglected to mention that you're running Web Slinger this weekend in the Jockey Club Derby, and hopefully he can punch his ticket to the Breeders' Cup. John and DJ Stable also have an entrant in the Bourbon Stakes. So plenty of action for the home team here at Rail Talk. We'll be pulling for you guys as always, and hope to see you at the Breeders' Cup.
Yep. And Joe, you say that we have all these great horses running this week and everything like that. Guess where I'm going to be? Not in Kentucky. I was gonna set you up in your own segment. Like this was gonna be its own standalone segment, but now that you've sort of let the cat out of the bag, John is gonna be at his daughter Carly's wedding on Saturday at the Jersey Shore, and we gotta have like an applause emoji or a soundtrack of applause here, because we're so happy for you guys. Meg and I actually met Carly and Rob. They came and hung out with us in Brooklyn over the winter. Great people. We're so excited for them and for John and Michelle and for the whole family. What an absolute blessing. John, you gonna give us your toast, or do we have to be there for that? I'll give you a snippet. I'll just give you a little small appetizer tasting, snippet for you guys to enjoy and appreciate before the main course comes.
A little amuse-bouche.
I'm assuming that's French for a little taste, but I wouldn't know. When Rob, my future son-in-law, came to us and told us that he had intentions of being married, or of being engaged to Carly, I told him two things. And the first thing I told him is, listen, I was born into this family. I don't have a choice. You're choosing to marry into this family. Are you sure you want to do this? That's number one. And number two, and more serious, is that, I've been blessed with two daughters, and they're both phenomenal people. But if I had a son, I'd really want him to be like Rob. And I remember telling him that, and very heartfelt telling him that, because he's just a wonderful guy. And you mentioned before, he's a classy individual, and I couldn't be happier, that Carly and Rob are going to tie the knot this weekend. That's not to say that if we were 8-5 in any of these races, I might be in Kentucky, but the fact that we're double digits in a lot of these races made the decision much easier for me.
I mean, you also have the private jet, so you could theoretically do both. Go to Keeneland for Saturday and then come back Saturday night for the wedding. I thought when John said he wanted to have if he had a son, he would want it to be like me. I thought he was going to say like me, but I guess Rob's a good choice.
You are like the son I've never had, or at least a little brother.
Never wanted.
They're never wanted. Exactly. Michelle, this test came back. Are you sure? You sure he's ours?
That's all right. I'll just be your podcast son.
There you go.
Or little brother. I don't think John's the gap is quite big enough. But anyway, I'm so happy for Carly and Rob and for John and for the whole family. You guys are going to have a blast, and, congratulations to you and to Carly and Rob and their life together. I hope they stay in Brooklyn and we can see them, every once in a while, but it's just great. And I agree. Like he's a great dude, and they're a perfect match. So shout out to the Green family, and we're so excited for you.
Thanks, buddy.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of Rail Talk. If you like this episode, be sure to hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel. Be the first to know when new episodes drop. You'll find weekly podcast episodes, blooper reels, and one-on-one interviews in our Breakaway Rail Talk features. And be sure to leave us a like and a comment below. We love talking to y'all, and who knows, you might just end up on one of our shows. All right, so that's going to do it for this episode of Rail Talk. We had no guests, so I have no guests to thank, but I still had a lot of fun. And John, best of luck to you and Michelle and Carly and Rob and Len and the whole family at the wedding this Saturday. We're really excited for you guys, and just don't drink too much too early, John. I know that's a big problem for you. Like, just keep it together,
It is. But the nice thing about it is that Len will have a booth for free consultations, because that way we can write off the wedding.
See? Expert accountants expert. They think of everything, and they'll think of everything for you. So there's that little bonus green group plug there. So have a great time this weekend. Everybody who's watching, enjoy the racing. Thanks to Patty Wolf, our producer. Thanks to our associate producers, Anthony LaRocca, Aaliyah LaRocca, and Nathan Wilkinson. Thank you so much for watching and listening. We'll see you next week right back here on Rail Talk.